haven't done a tag video in ages, whether it be homeschool tag or book tag. So today I decided I am going to do a tag, and what better tag than the historical fiction reader tag. So hi, my name is Angie. Welcome to my channel if you're new here, or welcome back if you've been coming for a while. So I am excited to make this video. I love historical fiction. I mean, that is not a surprise if you have been on this channel for a while. I love it so much that I helped host Historathon with Amanda over at Curly Reader this past February, which we're doing again in November, so make sure you mark your calendars for that. But I also run a book club, the Adventures in History Book Club, which kind of came out of Historathon, where we just read historical fiction books, one a month, and it's really fun. I'll put all the details below because I talk about it a lot on this channel. But I love historical fiction. And so when Emily over at ARG Schooling put out this tag video, I'm pretty sure she made this past spring sometime. So I've been meaning to make this tag, but today I'm gonna do it. And so I'm gonna link her information all down below. She's so fun. I originally came across Emily's channel just due to her homeschool curriculum, Build Your Library, that I've used in the past. I'm not using it this current year, but it's not because I don't love it. I could always come back to it. I'm just trying something else out. But Emily's videos are so much fun. She does a ton of book hauls. She loves to drink tea. She loves to read historical fiction because a lot of her curriculum is a lit-based curriculum. So she's constantly reading historical fiction books, albeit middle grade, young adult, and definitely adult historical fiction, just because I think it is her favorite genre. So go check her out, please. She's wonderful. And then I'm actually going to tag people right now because I feel like I always forget at the end of my tag videos to tag people, and I want to see this tag start rolling if it could. So I'm gonna tag Amanda over at the Curly Reader. Like I said, we co-host Historathon, so she loves historical fiction. I'm also gonna tag Krista from Books and Jams. She's so fun. She loves historical fiction. She has a ton on her shelves, so I would love to hear her thoughts on some of these questions. Same with April from Getting Hugga With It. She has always loved historical fiction. I love getting recommendations from her as well. And then some other people. Let's do Karen from Karen Reads. Let's do Emily from Nobel Novels. Okay, who else? I can't think of anybody else on the top of my head, but if you love historical fiction, please do this tag. I would love to see this tag get rolling because there's not as many people making videos about historical fiction books on Booktube as there is kind of other genres, I'll say. So anyway, that's the tags. Let me get into the questions. First question is, what is your favorite time period to read about? I feel like lately I have really been enjoying like westward expansion type books, or even just more exploration of untouched lands. So it doesn't have to necessarily be the US during that time frame, but it could be other countries, or even like Alaska, which was a little later. So you're talking books like The Great Alone. And so this is later than the westward expansion for sure. It's I think the 70s, 1970s, but it still has that real untouched land, live off the land sort of feel to it. And same with this one, Where the Crawdads Sing, so not westward expansion, but it has a lot to do with kind of nature and her being in the marshland of North Carolina and what it kind of feels like to live that close to the land. So I haven't even finished this book. I'm currently reading it, but that's the type of book I feel like I'm being drawn to. This one for sure. I love this book. This was our May book club pick, and it's Where the Lost Wander by Amy Harmon, and this is Oregon Trail book, so you're talking definitely westward expansion. We also read The Children's Blizzard, which had to do with the late 1800s Dakota Territory, where you had homesteaders and a really big storm. So I feel like that is really what I've been reading a ton about. I really do like other time periods, but I feel like currently that's my interest. And so I'm gonna say that, westward expansion, survival, untouched land sort of stories. All right, the next question is, what book made you fall in love with historical fiction? And this is hard because I've just been reading for so long, and then I kind of took a break during grad school and then having kids. So I read historical fiction before, but I'm gonna answer this question as to like what brought me back to historical fiction, and that would be this book, The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I've talked about this book so many times on this channel, but I really enjoyed it. It sucked me in, it gave me all the emotions. It is a World War II book. It's a book focusing on two sisters, one who has a family and she's more responsible, the older sister, and then the younger sister who is still single, and she just really is a fighter and wants to join the rebellion and make a difference against the Nazis. It's really good. I'm a big Kristen Hanna fan, but this is still my favorite Kristen Hanna book. And the third question is, if you could write yourself into any historical fiction novel or visit a time period, what would it be and why? And so I thought that actually is kind of a hard question, because no matter what time period you pick, I feel like it's going to be more challenging, or you kind of taking on a more difficult life. But when I really thought about it, there's one time frame and really an event that I find super interesting. And some of you might find this a little bit morbid, but I am really interested, and I always have been really interested in the Spanish flu, in the 1919 flu. It was kind of one of those interests that drove me in choosing microbiology when I was trying to decide what to pursue my PhD in, because I knew it was going to be biology because I'm just fascinated with the human body. But infectious disease, I feel like the Spanish flu kind of pushed me that direction. But then if you're like, well, what book do you want to hop into? A book about the Spanish flu sounds crazy, right? So a couple books that I have loved. So As Bright as Heaven by Susan Meisner was my favorite book from last year. And it definitely is a book that I found fascinating because it really documents and tells the story of this family as they live in Philadelphia during the time that the flu hit. And Philadelphia was one of the cities that was hit the hardest in the US. And so this is a great one. But then here is also another Spanish flu book that I read. I actually made a video comparing these two. I'll link it above if anybody's interested in Spanish flu books like I am. But I loved this book. It's Emma Donohue's book, The Pull of the Stars. And this talks about the Spanish flu, but it is in a completely different context. It takes the perspective of a nurse in Ireland on a maternity ward of women who are coming in that are influenza positive, and it's causing them to either have their babies early or have complications, and just telling the story through that lens of like what the medicine was like in 1918, 1919, and how they tried to help these women. And there's just such different stories, but I find that topic so fascinating that I would just love to kind of jump into that time frame. So that's my answer. Okay, so the fourth question is, have you read a historical fiction novel that's so gripping it sent you on a research deep dive? And the answer is yes. I think that's one of my favorite things about historical fiction novels, but this one in particular. I read this during Historathon, and it's The Bookwoman of Troublesome Creek, and this is by Kim Michelle Richardson. And this was about the blue people in Kentucky. And so there is this genetic disorder, it's a recessive gene, that if it's combined, it basically causes the skin to turn blue. And it's very rare, and it didn't happen very much, but it clustered in the hills of Kentucky, especially during, what time frame are we talking? The 1930s. And so that just hooked me on this. This book isn't just about that by any means. It is about a woman who is blue-skinned, but she joins the pack horse library, and she takes a route that is kind of dangerous and isolating as she takes books out into the countryside, or out really into the mountains of Kentucky to some really poor individuals. And it's an amazing story. I felt very emotionally moved by it. Not just the prejudice she felt due to being different, but also the poverty that was depicted in this book based on the people that she was trying to help. So it was a really good book, but it definitely did make me Google blue people in Kentucky, and it's just really, really fascinating. And the next question is, do I have a favorite historical fiction, like auto-buy author? Someone who, when they write a book, I will definitely buy their books. I mean, the first is Kristen Hanna. I have bought pretty much any new Kristen Hanna book that's come out, and I'm in the process of collecting all her backlisted ones, the ones I haven't read, because I've read a number of them, but I've just usually picked them up from the library. So Kristen Hanna. Also, I would say Susan Meisner, like As Bright as Heaven, I really enjoyed. I'm going to be picking up The Nature of Fragile Things for the August book club, which I'm super excited about. I've been kind of putting it off so I can read it with the group, and so I'm really excited for that. So Susan Meisner is another auto-buy. I would say Stuart Turton is also an auto-buy for me. I don't know if he's historical fiction. He's a very unique author, but I really liked The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, and the latest one, which was The Devil in the Dark Water. And so I really enjoyed both of those books. Some other authors that are potentially auto-buy, I'm not sure yet, because I've just really loved one of their books, would be Ariel Lawhon. I loved Codename Helen. And then Marie Benedict, because I love the other Einstein. So I have a couple that are potentials, but really Kristen Hanna, Susan Meisner, and Stuart Turton are some of my favorites. So question number 6 is, what is your favorite historical fiction movie or TV show? And so I honestly don't watch that much TV. I think it's partly because of my kids and the age. They just want to watch with me and nothing's really appropriate for their ages. And I like to read more and I like to sleep more than I like to watch TV. But I would say I do have a couple I've really enjoyed. I forget who put this out, but there was a docudrama I think that was out maybe 2 years ago called The Hot Zone. That was really fun. It was about the Ebola outbreak and it was based on the Richard Preston book. And so I really enjoyed that. That was only like 8 episodes or something. So I liked that. I do like Outlander, but again, I just don't have the time. I pretty much only watched the first season and I enjoyed it because I had read the book, but I haven't read any more of the books or watched any more of the seasons. And we started watching The Crown, which was so far really good, but again, I just don't watch enough TV, so I kind of forget the plot line if I watch a show like once every 3 weeks or a month. And it's hard to keep a show going. But those are the historical fiction ones that I would say I really enjoyed. All right, and the last question states that historical fiction is often underrepresented on Booktube. What book would you recommend to hook a reader of any genre? And so this was a good question. I initially thought of The Book Thief, just because it's so good. It's so good and it's middle grade, so it's accessible. But then it is a little bit of a slow start. And so I'm not sure if I would recommend this totally unless someone's okay with a slow start. Then I would recommend this one. But I have a couple other ones. So as I was thinking about World War II historical fiction books that I think are pretty accessible, that I know a lot of people have read even if they're not big historical fiction book readers, this book really came to mind. So it's All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. Such a beautifully written book. It's also the subject matter. I really enjoyed the fact that it was about 2 kids. So it's about a little German boy and a little French girl, and it follows their stories until their stories collide. And the little girl is blind, and I believe she's trying to escape the Paris bombings with her dad, and she goes to kind of the shore where she has a great uncle, I believe, and that's where they flee to, and that's where there's a lot of their stories told from. And then the little boy, he is an orphan in Germany, and then he kind of catches the eye of I think a German soldier who then gets him enlisted in the Hitler Youth, and he's really good with like electronics and radios and fixing things, and so he rises in the ranks, and it tells his story as he's training to be a Nazi officer. It tells the story as he's like trying to wrestle with right and wrong, and like the stories and the messaging that's coming at him and that he kind of absorbs when he's younger and then fights against a little bit later in the book. And so it's a beautiful book. I really, really enjoyed it. But yet again, it is about World War II. So I don't know if this is super accessible to people unless they're looking for a World War II book. Then I highly recommend this. But if I were to try to sell the genre to, say, somebody who reads primarily like maybe contemporary fiction, I would recommend this book, The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Super fun book about this movie star in the 50s. And the book is her telling her life to this reporter and all the things that go with that. And so it's just a very entertaining read. I really, really enjoyed this book. And so I would say that's a historical fiction, but it has a contemporary feel to it. But say somebody loves fantasy, which I know there's a lot of people out there who read fantasy. I read some fantasy too, and I really enjoy it. And so I would recommend this book. Guys, I love this book. I love this whole series. So it's The Bear and the Nightingale, and this by Catherine Arden. And this is very historical, but very fantastical. And so it is about this girl, Vasya. She's in Russia, and I think it's like the 1600s Russia during the big rise of Orthodox Christianity, but some of the townspeople, and especially kind of in the villages further away from like Moscow, if you will, they are still kind of holding to some of the old legends and ways of like the spirits and different things that influence the house. But the main character, Vasya, you really watch grow up during this book. So she grows into some powers. Her mom was a witch. She's becoming a witch. And then there's this frost demon character who is involved. And it's just so good. I'm not really explaining it super well, but this is an excellent book. I feel like if you love fantasy, it brings in some historical elements to the fantasy story, and I really do believe that could hook someone into maybe pursuing some more historical fiction books, as well as their love of fantasy. So I would recommend this one. So anyway, that is the tag. It was a fun tag. I knew I couldn't pass up. I just have too much to say. I have too many opinions about historical fiction. And so I really hope the people I tagged do the tag, but I know everybody's busy, so don't worry about it if you can't. But if you want to, please do the tag, even if I didn't tag you. And if you are watching this, I would love to know your answers to these questions. What are some of your favorite historical fiction books? What are some of your auto-buy authors? Are there any books that sent you on a research rabbit trail? All those things, let me know down below, because I'm always looking for new historical fiction book recommendations. All right, that's what I have. Thank you for taking the time to watch. Please consider liking and subscribing if you're not already subscribed. And otherwise, I'll see you in the next book video. All right, have a wonderful day.